Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about rent to rents, what it is, what you can do with it, and what are the benefits operating rent to rents. What are the benefits as a landlord, giving your property to someone running it as a rent to rent, and what the different strategies are running rent to rent as well. So rent to rent or R2R. You can do as HMO, serviced accommodation, social housing. You can do emergency accommodation. You can do supported living. And there's a few more you can do as well, but they're the main ones. So what it is where you take control of a property, you rent a property off someone, and then you rent that as a company let. So you don't rent it as a normal AST, as a tenant. You rent it as a company, and that's what the contract is. It's called a company let contract. So the benefits of operating the property, of doing rent to rent, are things like cash flow. You don't need to own it, obviously, to do it. So you don't need to buy a property and own it outright to run it as social housing or service accommodation or a HMO. You can rent a property off someone as long as you've made them aware that you're going to be running it in whatever you're going to be running it as, and you've got the correct contracts in place. Then you don't need to own the property. You can just rent it off someone and do it that way. It's a good way of generating cash flow each month. It's a good way of generating not passive income. You can turn it passive by getting management companies to manage the property for you. Because you're a company, you can get someone to just manage the business however you're running it in the rent to rent. So if you're running it as serviced accommodation, you can get someone in to manage the serviced accommodation. If it's a HMO, you can get letting agents to manage the tenants that are staying in the house. If it's social housing, you can just rent the property to the council, and they'll pay you a price per room. Depending on the area you're in, will depend on the rate that you get from your council. So they are pretty hands off. You can't just tell them you're going to run it as an SA and have it in the contract that it's going to be run just as an SA and not stick to that, because you're breaking the contract. And if you break the contract because it's not a normal AST contract, you don't have tenant rights. The landlord can just kick you out. You're a company. If you refuse to leave, they can get the police involved. They can literally come in and just remove all your stuff and you're out. You can also negotiate the terms of the contract with the landlord. Because if a landlord's getting benefits from you operating as a company let in the property, i.e., they're not going to have void periods as they would with normal tenants. You'll be taking care of the maintenance up to a certain point. Obviously, if the roof decides to cave in from heavy winds or whatever, or just old age, you'll have discussed this with the landlord and made them aware that they'll be taking care of anything that costs over £500. So if the boiler breaks, they will be responsible for the boiler. If the roof, you need a roof replacement or repairs that cost over £500, the landlord will be responsible for the roof, etc. So it's got to be a win-win. So it's got to be a win-win for you operating the property. It's got to be a win-win for the landlord as well. You've got to both feel like you're getting something out of it, if that makes sense. So benefits for the landlord, obviously it's hands off for you. You're just getting that cash flow each month. Your mortgage is paid. If you haven't got a mortgage and you're just getting rental income off it, then you're just getting cash every month with, you know, relatively low expenses. The same way that someone can negotiate with the landlord operating the property, you can also negotiate with the operator. You can also negotiate with the person operating it as the landlord. So you can put things in the contract. You can put what you want in the contract. But it's got to be a win-win, you know. But if you've got, you know, things that you just, you know, you just absolutely wouldn't entertain, you don't want it, you know, you don't want none of it going on. So say someone comes to you and they want to rent your property as a HMO. It's not in an Article 4 area, and they're well within the area that the property is in, is well within its rights to be operated as a HMO. And 3 months down the line, they just decide to change their mind and run it as an SA. You can put stipulations in the contract that, you know, underline the issues, you underline the terms, the agreement that you've got in place with the person operating the property. So you can also negotiate repair costs and stuff like that. Obviously, if someone is taking on your property and you're the landlord, and they're guaranteeing, you know, they're guaranteeing you rent for 2 or 3 years every month, and so they don't have a break clause in it or nothing, they've just got your property for 2 or 3 years, you know, there is gonna have to be some wiggle room on monthly rent that you're gonna be getting and stuff like that. So maybe, I'm not saying you got to cut it in half to what you would normally get, but you know, there's got to be understanding that, you know, the person taking control of the property is going to be responsible for repairs. It's going to be responsible for the people coming in and out of the property. They've also, you know, they might have spent a lot of money staging the property and stuff like that as well. So, you know, you might not have any of your furniture in there and stuff like that. You know, you're demanding big deposit and a high month's rent each month. You know, stuff like that needs to be a win-win again. It needs to be a win-win for both of you. So stuff like that can be negotiable and should be negotiable. The contract that you've got with the operator of the property, so whoever's renting the property off you as a company let, again, then they don't have tenant rights. They don't have AST contract rights. They're not tenants. They are companies renting the property. So if they fall, you can put things in your contract like if they fall short on rent for 2 months or a month, they're out. They're out straight away, and they get 7 days notice, and they're gone. There's no, you know, they can't just squat in the property and make you, you know, get a summons and get them to court and pay thousands of pounds in court fees, go back and forth with them in court over the course of 12 months, and you know, they're still not paying you rent for 12 months, 14 months, and then you might get to court and the court favours with a tenant. That's, you know, that's a normal ASD, but as a company let, they don't have any of them rights, which is good for both of you, because you know the person operating your property as a company let is gonna act in good faith, act in the best interest of themselves and you, obviously, because they want to keep operating the property as a rent to rent, and they also want to keep you happy as well. You know, if they're running it as a serviced accommodation, it's in their best interest. If they've spent, you know, if it's a 4-bed house, they might have spent 4,000 furnishing the property, putting beds in, putting tables in and chairs, TVs, painting, decorating the walls, putting the pictures up. You know, they might have, you know, bought white goods. You know, so they might have invested thousands of pounds into the property. So again, it's in their interest to keep the property in the best possible state it can be in. One, because it helps maintain the things inside the property. And two, if they don't keep it in good condition, they're not going to get guests. And if they do get guests, the ones that do come, they're just going to leave bad reviews. They're not going to come back. The serviced accommodation company won't get bookings because they'll have shitty reviews on the booking platforms, Airbnb, Booking.com. You know, so they'll be getting the place regularly cleaned. They'll have people going in and out of the property, giving it checks, making sure everything is as it should be. I mean, there's a few cons to rent to rent. One of them being the upfront cost. You know, you might be looking at, for a 3-bed house, obviously depending on your area, let's say Birmingham, where I'm from, for a 3-bed house, you're looking at £1,200 a month rent. Your deposit's usually £1,200, usually a month's rent. So, you know, you're on £2,400 already. Put another £4,000 on for furnishing, and you're on £6,400 in just to get started, just to get going. Which, not, you know, £6,400 might not be a lot of money to some people, but you know, it's a lot of money to someone starting out in rent to rent and stuff like that. So that, you know, there is small cons, but it is still cheaper than buying a house. Still cheaper than buying a house and then starting it up that way. So, you know. And this is just a few benefits that landlords have got, a few benefits that companies have got doing rent to rents, and just a few cons that you might find you come across doing rent to rent. But it's, all in all, is a really good strategy. Rent to rent is a really good strategy. It's a really good strategy for generating cash flow each month. You can scale pretty quick as long as you've got properties to use as company lets. And landlords, you know, if you're thinking about doing rent to rents, or you're happy to rent your property as a company let to someone, then get in contact, message me, visit my Insta and message me, leave a comment below, comment interested, and I'll be sure to respond and give you an email, or hop on the phone and give you a call. If you're looking for rent to rent deals in the West Midlands area, in the Midlands area, to be honest with you, I do know a lot of deal sources that are sourcing rent to rent deals, good rent to rent deals in and around Birmingham, Coventry, Stafford, Dudley, Birmingham City Centre, all across Birmingham, over Worcester. So if you're interested in deals, in getting yourself a rent to rent with all the terms already negotiated with landlords who are happy to give their property out to people like yourselves looking for rent to rent deals, then get in touch, comment deals in the comment section on the video, email me, get on my Insta page, get in contact with me on my Insta page, and message deals, or message that you're interested in getting yourself some rent to rent deals, and we can take it from there. But that's everything. Just brushing and just skimming the surface on rent to rents. Obviously it goes a lot more in depth than that, but again, this is just rent to rents in a nutshell. So thanks for watching, and come back for the next one.